Zoom out real quick. Next, what I'm going to do is, since I was planning on swapping out for a new, nicer jack, what I'm going to do is I just so happen to have some of this around. It's not exactly the most common thing to have unless you work on stuff like this often. Well, here's the catch. I'm looking for some 2-conductor wire, but what I have is 3-conductor. As you can see, there's 2 wires and a shield, which is the ground, but I think it might make more sense actually if I just use the white and black, twist them together. I'll show you what that looks like, and then throw some heat shrink tubing on it, which I have this whole collection of from a badass store called All Electronics out here in the valley. And it's all cut to 4-inch lengths with different diameters. So I think I'm going to do that, even though it's not going to... It'll just organize things a little bit better. I might even just leave it twisted up, but I'll show you what's going to happen with that here in a second. Well, I don't know. I'm still getting used to this camera, but anyway, hopefully it's in focus enough. So what I'm going to do is pretty much the same process as before with most of this stuff. I'm going to get my wire, I'm going to pull it with some pressure, kind of against the curl that it has. Just to get it to straighten out just a little bit. Anyway, so what we're going to do, expose some of this wire. And if you are cutting it and you don't cut it all the way and you start pulling on it, you will see which part needs to be cut still, because it'll stretch just a hair. So again, I'm going to do something kind of weird just to keep this thing up and off the bench, because if it's on the bench it'll just melt stuff, because this soldering iron is like 700 something degrees probably. Same thing with everything. Clean tin. I'm going to tin the wire itself. Since this is going to be our hot color, we have to know which tab is which on mono jacks like this. Easiest way to keep track of what's what is the this tab, the thing that the cable actually clips onto, is your hot, right? That touches the tip of the cable, and the actual rest of it, this whole inside piece, is the ground. It touches the actual sleeve part of the cable itself. So if you look on here, you can see that this tab is actually connected to this middle hole with all the metal right here. That, whatever's touching this middle piece right here that you can see from the top, it's connected, all that stuff, that's your ground. Easy peasy. So that makes it, the only other possibility for this guy is that this tab that isn't obviously connected to anything from the top, you just see a wafer board right there, that's going to be your hot. And to make a long boring thing shorter, hot wire, hot tab, they will be connected as such. So as always, what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually see if I can't get this thing to stay flat, which ain't going to happen, so whatever. Not the biggest deal. I'm just going to angle this to where it's easier for me from where I'm standing. That shit looks like it's super out of focus, but I don't know of any other way to do this. Whatever, that's going to work fine. Normally you're going to want this to be stiff or solid, connected, mounted to something, not just rolling around like this, because it'll be easy to knock around, but I am used to the annoyance of such things, so I'm not tripping on it. So I'm just going to heat this tab up for a while, add a bunch of solder till it's got solder on it, I'm going to turn this thing around because I want the wires to come off this direction. I'm going to heat this back up to where it becomes shiny liquid. Place that wire on it. Give it a little pat with the hot tip with everything melted, just to kind of get the solder to go over the wire itself. And then I'm going to leave this attached for now. I'm going to do the same process with the black wire, because that's going to be our ground. Again, this stuff isn't rocket surgery or anything, so you know, the neater you are, quote unquote, the fancier you are, totally not a necessity. So what I'm just going to do, it looks a little crazier from that angle than it is, but this thing is ½ inch away from the plastic, so it's not going to be an issue. I'm just getting it up off the table, off the bench. Now we're going to do the same thing we did as with the other one. Try and manipulate this wire so it doesn't just keep springing it back to that. There we go. Same thing as the other one. I'm going to apply some serious heat to this. Sometimes these components have some sort of coating on it. I don't know what the coating is, but sometimes if you don't get it hot enough, it won't actually stick. The solder will begin to melt, but it won't actually stick to the part itself. So and ideally you're going to want something smooth like this. If you, I couldn't tell you exactly what or why it happens, you know, necessarily, but sometimes if you're not careful, you know, see if I can get this to stick. Okay. If you do it a little bit aggressive or weird, you can get like a sharp bump like that. It's not going to mess with anything. It's not like it's going to be wrong and not work. It just doesn't look quite as good as like a smooth blob. So now that I got both these wires attached and they're still attached to their respective spools, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch them to where they're kind of touching, just so I can actually grab them both at the same time with my, you know, dominant hand, if you will. And then I'm going to pull them like this until I get roughly the length I want. It's kind of arbitrary unless you know exactly what you're shooting for. This is way longer than I'm going to need, but this is where I'm going, because then I'll have a little bit extra at the end to play with, and then I can trim it to a better length when the time comes. But what I'm going to do now, I'm going to kind of switch my hands, do the same thing. I'm going to pinch them together with my non-dominant hand this time, just, you know, ½ inch above, just a ½ inch north, if you will, of the hot tab itself. So I'm just going to grab it right about there. And then this isn't the best wire for this, just because it's got a plastic coating instead of like a cloth would be better, but I'm just going to twist these together just so they kind of hang out together when I end up putting it in the guitar. This again doesn't have to look even. You don't even necessarily have to twist this stuff together. It's just, I think it looks good. And again, everything kind of moves as a unit instead of adding two more loose wires to the spaghetti mess that may or may not be inside your guitar. You just get it roughly towards the end. Again, I'm probably going to trim off some of this end stuff itself, but let me zoom back out real quick. Now we have our output jack. I'm also planning on replacing, this isn't like a brand new one, you can see it's pretty scratched up, but it is in much better condition than the one that's in there. These are all pretty much the same. I've rarely come across one that doesn't have the same screw footprint as like a normal Fender plate, so I am now going to mount this thing like it's this thing. I'm going to mount the jack into the jack plate. I haven't done one of these in a little while, but if I remember correctly, it's best to keep the tab down. Just because if you have it up like this, I mean, it's not going to really cause any issues necessarily, but you don't really want to go side or side, because oftentimes the cavity in the body that this all fits in, you might actually physically block this tab from bending out of the way as you put the jack in. Never mind the noise, I'm not going to shut it off for this, but when you plug the jack in, it has to... I'll do that again without my thumb in the way. Do it this way. It actually bends that tab out and clips in place. So if you have it up against a wall of wood, say, even if it's just touching down here, sometimes it's enough tension to where you are not going to get this thing in, and if you do, it's going to be super tight and it's going to be real hard to get out, and it can cause some issues. So I'm just going to kind of just mount this. Again, like I said, it's going in the body this way. That means this is going to be in towards the guitar. The thing is routed out pretty deep, and I'm going to put the tab down like this. And if you've got yourself a nice switchcraft jack like this, the nut is 1/2 inch, if I'm not mistaken. We'll find out. Another thing, if you want to make it look a little nicer, which I might end up doing later on, but fortunately with Fender style stuff, it's all so modular that it's really easy to, you know, even when it's done and put together, you can take a piece off and reconfigure some stuff if you don't like it. Like this, I think the threaded part of this jack is coming out way too far to look good, but I'm not too worried about it, so I'm going to take my 1/2 inch driver, and then it's kind of tough sometimes because as you're driving it in, the piece itself wants to turn, so do whatever you can, just don't hurt yourself, because it's actually possible. Like, you're not going to cut yourself, but just, you're going to be applying pressure in a direction, you know. So you can see that's already off kilter. What you can do if you recognize that, so I have this turned in a little bit, but I do need to drive this direction with the driver. So if now that it's pretty tight, what I can do to kind of finish it off and get it straightened up is stop holding the jack, and then with the driver itself, you're still turning right, so you're applying pressure. You're not unscrewing it, you're still screwing it in. You can kind of force the jack to turn and line up how you want it. So that should be nice and strong. If that ends up being not, like it starts coming undone, you'll need to add a star washer back here, like a lock washer. I just don't have any on the bench at the moment. I'm not too concerned with it. But ultimately, this will end up in the guitar as fishes through under the pickguard. So let's do that. What we're going to do before we end this one is I'm actually going to, we just wired up the jack itself to the plate. We have the new switch installed, and the mid-tone is now a bridge and mid-tone. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to just lightly clean this surface, just because there's some dust and stuff. I'm going to hit it with some of this. Again, this isn't going to be the final clean or polish or anything. This is just to get the majority of the garbage off, so it's not so nasty. Let's get most of this stuff off. Eventually I will, assuming we keep these pickups in, I'm going to end up taking either a, probably a Q-tip and some sort of a little more hardcore of a cleaner to the poles, because they're a little bit rusty. But ultimately that's not going to cause too much of an issue. So if you only have super aggressive plastic melting solvents, don't worry about it. It's not going to ruin anything. Editing Bay Eric here. I just wanted to clarify that it won't ruin anything to not use extreme solvents, but extreme solvents will ruin your pickguard. So if that's all you got, leave it dirty. It's not that big of a deal. So we clean, clean, clean. Also, since we physically turned these potentiometers from where they were sitting, now the text isn't oriented right at 100%. Like, these are maxed out to 10 and they're all wonky, so I need to take these off to clean them anyway underneath them. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to reapply them in the correct orientation. And actually, while I have this off, I think I'm going to wrench them down a little bit more too, just so they don't spin around so easily. I want everything to be relatively tight. You don't want to strip anything, but what am I using? Is this a 10? Probably. No. 7, what, 16ths is that? 7/16. So I'm holding this in place with my thumb so it doesn't turn any further, ideally, and then I wrench it down with the driver. Just basically you apply counter pressure to whichever way you're turning so the pot doesn't keep spinning. So anywho, those are wrenched in a little bit better now. Generally speaking, assuming that this guitar is straight across like this, you want the text to kind of be right about there too. A little too tilted. I think we're going to go with this. It's not going to be perfect, but you know, if you're building a fresh guitar with fresh parts, you can get this stuff to line up a lot better for the most part. Okay. It's not perfect, but hey, nothing about this is going to be perfect. That's kind of the fun of hot rodding a quote-unquote crappy guitar. So what we're going to do is attach this output jack where it needs to go with the full length of this stuff, and then test it and make sure that there's no undue buzzing, and make sure that the grounds are good, make sure we don't actually need this, and if we do, we'll find a spot for it and that whole thing. If we do need this, it'll probably present itself by having some buzzing that only goes away if you touch the body of the switch itself. That means that this is not grounded and it will need to be, but like I said, I don't think we'll need this considering the steel, the metal part of this body is touching this shielding tape, which is also touching the body of stuff that is grounded, so it should all be connected to ground. Well, one thing we can do actually just to check is, no, this is what I'm looking for, multimeter. So what we're going to try and, what we're going to do is set this to continuity mode. And then this is kind of messed up, so this red terminal, or this red plug, has to be kind of sideways for it to connect. I don't know why. I think it's just because it's not the greatest. So what you do, just to make sure, cool, it's working. So what we're going to do is touch one of these leads, because since we're just doing continuity, it doesn't matter which direction anything is going. Red and black kind of mean nothing when it's in continuity mode for the most part. We're going to touch one of the leads to something that's grounded, meaning the back of this pot, and then we're going to touch it to the body of the switch itself. And since we have continuity, that means it's grounded. I don't even necessarily need to check anything else with that, but what we're going to do is still plug this. We're going to attach all this stuff together, plug a cable in, and then do some tap testing on the pickups just to make sure it's working. And I think that's where we're going to end this one for tonight, because I am super hungry and I think food is being cooked inside, Plus, I got an electronics project inside the house that I'm dying to start up. So that's what we're gonna do. So I'm going to remove this leftover output wire from before, because we just don't need it. Actually, it's going to be in the way if we keep it in there, so I'm going to hit that, get rid of it. This thing, what it was, or the original one, is bare wire is ground, white wire is hot. That's why we chose to kind of match it. White means hot. With our stuff, black is going to be ground. So it's going to be in the same orientation, just with a different kind of wire setup. So anyway, I'm going to strip this and end up getting it attached. So I'm going to add a new little piece of, a little glob for the ground of this jack, just to make it easier for myself and not so messy to work with. So now that this is hooked up like it would be in the guitar, short of the bridge ground, but that's when you have strings on. We don't need that just yet. It's only necessary when the guitar is put together. So now what we're going to do, see if we have any issues. Okay, so now we're going to test our new tone circuit. Put it in the middle because we'll expect it to do what it was doing, which is nice. It was already kind of doing that on this position just because this one was toning out and that one wasn't. But now success. We've done it, guys. So anyway, that is proof that this is working. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this back off. We're going to end it there. But I'm going to take this off just so when we actually put the thing back together, you can actually put it back together. So anywho, I'm just going to show you that last desoldering process, and we're going to call it. And on the next video, we will get to the body. And we're going to take the thing apart, and we're going to see if I don't have any better parts to throw on there and make the bridge hopefully better. If not, maybe just the saddles. And then the tuning machines were already replaced when I first got the guitar, 'cause that's just what I had on hand at the moment at that time. And then we will feel out the frets, take a look at everything, see if we can't straighten the neck back out all the way, and turn that thing into a kind of a beast of a guitar. And then maybe to help me pay some rent, sell the fucking thing. But until that happens, see you next time.